Greetings, Apple Stumpers. We're back again with another terminology video. This one will be fairly brief and is going to kind of piggyback on the last two terminology videos that we published a while back on this channel. So if you want to refer back to those, I'll put links to them in the description section. Briefly, we covered what single action means in terms of how a firearm operates, and we covered what double action means in terms of how a firearm operates. Both of those terms have to do with what the trigger does when it's pulled or pressed or otherwise moved to its rearward position within the trigger guard. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to refer to that action as pulling the trigger in this video. So if you've heard press, trigger squeeze, or some other term, just be aware that I'm using trigger pull in this video to describe the action of using the finger to move the trigger all the way rearward and cause the firearm to discharge. Just like with revolvers, pistols can be either single action or double action. Some of them will switch between the two. They may start off as double action, then after one round is fired they turn into single action. Again, the designation of action has to do with what happens within the firearm when the trigger is pulled that makes it deliver the next round up underneath the firing pin or striker and enable it to be fired. Alright, so here we have a pistol. This is a small compact pistol made by Ruger, and this caliber is .380, if that makes a difference. It doesn't really for this demonstration. So we're going to check and make sure it's unloaded. So there's the magazine and there are no cartridges in there. And we'll look down the chamber. No cartridges are present. So this gun is safe, it's not loaded, and we're going to focus now on the trigger, which I'm going to pull rearward, and then we're going to look here in this little cutout here. You can see the hammer. This is a hammer fired pistol, and it is double action only. And not only that, it is what they call single strike action or trigger, and I'll explain that here in a minute. So in order to demonstrate this effectively without damaging the firearm, we're going to use snap caps of the appropriate caliber, and we've seen those before when we used a double action revolver to demonstrate. So what I'm going to do here is take these snap caps, which are turned or milled aluminum, solid aluminum. There's no powder, no primer, no projectile. They're one piece, and they are not capable of being fired under any circumstances. In the back, where a primer would normally be in a genuine cartridge, there's a rubbery kind of substance that absorbs the strike of the firing pin so that the firing pin mechanism is not damaged during dry firing. So I'm going to insert these 5 snap caps into the magazine. This magazine normally holds 6, but that's fine. 5 in there. Insert the magazine into the magazine well and tap it in there, so now its magazine is charged with snap caps. And what I'm going to do is retract this part of the firearm, which is called the slide, and we'll cover that in future terminology videos. I'm going to retract that, let go of it, and now there's a snap cap in the chamber. And if you look through this little witness cutout here, you can maybe make out the purple color of that right there. So now we can dry fire this, and it won't damage the firing pin or the internal mechanism or the hammer. So I want you to see the hammer move as I do this, and I'm going to go ahead, when we're looking at the back end of the slide where the hammer is, I'll go ahead and pull this all the way rearward, and we'll see the hammer come back and then watch it fall. So you can see it moving. Now here we go, we're going to let it fall this time. Okay, Now, I said this is a single strike mechanism in here, so I can pull the trigger all I want to right now, and since that was not a genuine cartridge and the cartridge did not fire, the slide didn't come back from the force of the bullet traveling down the barrel. That's by action what's called recoil operated, and we'll cover that in a future video. But anyway, we're going to have to eject that snap cap, and it went about 4 feet away. Load in another one, and through the mechanism, the slide coming all the way back halfway cocks the hammer and leaves it in that position, so that's sort of half cocked, but actuating the trigger, pulling the trigger all the way rearward is required before that hammer will disengage from an internal part there called a sear and fall forward, strike the firing pin, and if it were a real cartridge, cause that cartridge to fire. Okay, so now you can't see the hammer anymore because it's all the way forward. Again, it's a single strike trigger, so I can do this all day long, and that's not going to pull the hammer back again and ready it for firing. The slide has to come all the way back, eject that snap cap, load in another one, and now the hammer is at the half cock position and it's ready to go again. So this is a true double action pistol because it's the action of the trigger that causes the hammer to come all the way back till it disengages from the sear, flies forward and strikes the primer. Alright, so I've recovered those 2 snap caps that were ejected. I'm going to remove the magazine, remove the 2 remaining ones out of there, and there's one left in the chamber. We'll take that out. And now we have, again, an empty chamber and no magazine. There are some double action pistols that have a second strike capability, which means that, again, unloaded, no magazine. If I were to pull the trigger and there was a live round in the chamber but it didn't go off, I could pull the trigger again and have a second strike from the hammer to try to set that round off. Or I could clear it this way by pulling the slide all the way back, eject that dead round or that dud, and chamber a new round and shoot it that way. So that would be a second strike capability. This little pistol does not have that, and it's I almost considered it a problem with that little pistol, but some pistols do have second strike capability, and you can ask your firearms dealer if you go to look at firearms with potentially buying one in mind. Ask them whether the pistol that you're looking at has second strike capability. So here we have the snap caps, here we have the magazine, here we have the pistol. And I think what I'm going to do next is take the slide off of the pistol and show you internally what's going on there. So we'll just retract the slide just a tiny bit. Actually, we don't really need to. Pop this takedown pin out. Now we're not going to disassemble the pistol any further, not going to clean it. Just want to show you where the hammer is. So there's the hammer right there. I'm going to move the trigger just a little bit so you can see it moving. I am not going to pull the trigger all the way back and let it fall because that would potentially damage the hammer, and it's not a good idea. So anyway, you can see that, and it's a half cock. If it were all the way back here, it would be because I pulled the trigger all the way to the rear, and then the hammer would release from the internal part called the sear, fly forward, and hopefully strike the firing pin, which you can see that round thing right there. Round silver thing in the middle of that notch is the firing pin. Okay, so I'll put this back together. And put the takedown pin back in place. Function check, and it's good to go. Alright, so there you have it. There's a double action pistol, and we demonstrated how the trigger performs the action of moving the hammer to the rear and then releasing it so it can go forward to strike the cartridge. Again, a single action will not do that. All the trigger does in a single action firearm is release the hammer. Alright, so we're going to show you one more thing before we go at the end of this video, so stand by. Alright, before we go, I want to show you how a single action firearm might function. So here we have an airsoft. Here we have an airsoft model of, I believe this is a SIG pistol, possibly. It doesn't say on it anywhere, or does it? It says Stinger P7. So the P pistols that start with a P something are usually a Walther, but anyway, the concept is that this is a single action pistol. So I'll release the magazine, check and see that this is where the airsoft pellets would be visible if this magazine were ready to go, so it's obviously not. And the trigger has already been activated, pulled to the rear. So notice it's not doing anything. So what you have to do with this particular pistol is retract the slide and let it go forward. And now the trigger is ready to go. This is a safety, and move it to the off position. And you heard the mechanism act as though it were firing an airsoft pellet. It's not going to do it again. Now the trigger is armed again. You can put it on safe, and I can't pull it. Put it on fire. Now I can't disassemble this one enough to show you what's going on internally, but that is a single action trigger. All it's doing is releasing the firing pin or whatever it is that propels the airsoft pellet out the end of the barrel, that part right there. So do that. And if there were an airsoft pellet in this portion of the magazine, then if I pulled the trigger, the airsoft pellet would be expelled out the end of the barrel. So that's a single action trigger, and we demonstrated a double action trigger with that Ruger pistol. So that's what I wanted to show you. That'll be it for this edition of Apple Stump, and next time we'll take up another bit of terminology from the lexicon of firearms. Until then, be safe, be well, and have a good one. Adios. Bye.